America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity. Hello, and welcome to the Foreign Policy Review. I am Dustin Pickering, your host, and if you have not subscribed to this channel or shared our content, please feel free to do so right now. We have CARLO PARCELLI with us, and we have REGIS TREMBLAY, and today we're going to discuss a little bit about World War III upcoming, the pinpricks against Russia, and the Brics towards the end of the show, so stick around for this. So, CARLO, do you want to start off with some questions or some inquiries?
Well, I just wanted to ask Regis if I should hide under my desk like I did in grade school, given the possibility of World War III. You set this question for us for this show, Regis, and I'd like to get your opinion on, your elaboration on what you meant by World War III officially having begun.
Well, the head of the Russian Cosmos, Roscosmos, made a statement on Voltaire.org. I hadn't followed them very much, but what he said was Russia is prepared to attack the decision makers. And he gave a list of the longitude, latitude coordinates. And they were the White House, the Pentagon, they were the UK, France, Brussels, and Germany. There were 5 or 6 of them. And to me, that seemed to be a warning from Russia that they are pretty concerned. And I thought that it was pretty unusual. It didn't come from Putin or Lavrov, but Putin has said many times, if you attack us, we will attack the decision centers. And following up on that, Putin has clarified the decision center is not Kiev, it is not Brussels, it is Washington. So there you have my opinion on that. I think it's very dangerous. World War III, in terms of economics, the InfoWars, psychological operations, and what's going on in Ukraine right now, together with what's happening in Lithuania and Norway, Sweden and Finland joining NATO, and then, as we mentioned offline, Germany becoming a pirate on the open seas and confiscating 3 Russian oil tankers. Medvedev said these things are basically declarations of war. So we're in it. How bad does it get? Does it go nuclear? God forbid.
Yeah, well, yeah, you mentioned 3 of the concerns that I had written down, and what do you make of the Russian abandonment of Snake Island?
I I read something yesterday and again today that this was a gesture of goodwill by the Russians, because all military capability on Snake Island have been destroyed. And so that's basically the Russian position and what they've issued as a statement. I think it was yesterday and maybe it was today.
Also, I think it also might demonstrate the fact that if they even want to transport grain out of Odessa, they can't until the Ukrainians remove the landmines not landmines, excuse me, the mines in offshore of Odessa. But until they remove those mines, things can't flow out of that port. They can't flow out of that port. So perhaps that's another object lesson.
That's correct. In Russia, I receive reports every day from the Ministry of Defense. The Russian Navy or whoever they are have been working daily to remove those landmines so that shipping can again continue and those ships can leave, many of them carrying grain.
Right, yeah. So maybe we should move on to the St. Petersburg Economic Conference and Putin's speech at the conference.
Wow. I'll go back to February 2nd when President Putin and President Xi issued that 5,000-word declaration really directed to the United States. It basically said, we are moving on. Your unipolar world is a thing of the past. We are now moving in a different direction. This is our vision. We are moving on without you. President Putin and Xi have issued other statements since then, prior to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, basically stating the same thing. They've been talking about the expansion of the Brics, and you want to talk about that a little bit later in the show, that's fine. But Putin made it as clear as anybody could possibly make it at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum last week. Russia is done with the West. It's very simple. They're done with America. They do not have any trust in America or NATO, and they are moving on. Other statements coming from Lavrov and the former President Medvedev are saying, we don't care what America thinks. We don't care what NATO thinks. We are moving on in a different direction. They couldn't make it any clearer since February till the present day that they are totally dismissing and disregarding the United States. And I think, as I mentioned just a second ago, Russia has said repeatedly the decision centers are not Kiev and are not Brussels. The decision center is Washington. Everybody in Washington, whoever is cooking up this insane foreign policy, and the American people hopefully will wake up in time, because Russia has said we will attack the decision center. And Putin has made it clear many times. They have no defense for our hypersonic weapons, missiles. They have no defense against our sea-based submarine missiles, nuclear tipped, both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And I don't know why these people, whoever they are, who are making the decisions, don't understand what they're really facing.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in? Because I've got a couple of things.
So what does this expansion of the Brics, I mean, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but the challenge to the unipolar world, what would that mean to Washington and the power elite?
It's game over. Adios, amigo.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And I'm looking forward to talking about the Brics a little bit later in the show. There's an awful lot to talk about.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead,
Bill.
Bill.
Did you have something to say?
I mean, yeah, a new world order, a unipolar world order is what is going to result. It's unclear, how the West is going to respond to, Russia's actions and China's actions. It seems like there may be, gonna be in it for the long haul. There's gonna be, they're looking at in terms of decades, a new Cold War, and they're gonna slowly do their best to economically, tighten the noose around these intransigent countries. At the same time, putting military pressure on them and actually, literally bleeding them as best they can. And at some point, they're gonna maybe start interdicting shipping lanes with, the big U.S. Navy that they have, keeping commerce from traveling, which is the lifeline for China and really the world. But it's like an economic war of attrition, and the West thinks that it has the upper hand and that it can, that can manage Russia and China. And I think that remains to be seen. But it's unfortunate, just totally unfortunate that the West has that approach, that zero-sum approach to global governance and global hegemony. That they're really angry that they're losing, and they're taking a lot of steps to respond to what's going on. And I mean, it's interesting to speculate how that might play out, but it's definitely not good for humanity, not good for our planet, and it's totally unfortunate and reprehensible that the West is behaving like it does.
Todd Dowry wants to know from Regis, is DC being the decision-making center your conclusion, or is that a direct quote?
Yeah, no. I'm reading that from Todd Doherty. That is a direct quote, not only from Putin, but several other, like Lavrov and Medvedev, as I said. It's not my conclusion. And I'd like to add on to what Billy Bob was just saying.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that the United States of America and the collective West will be able to sustain their efforts much longer. And what I'm alluding to is the economic collapse of the entire U.S. Western economy. Jamie Dimon, head of one of the largest banks in the United States, in the world, has said America needs to prepare for the worst. Economists from America and around the world are seeing it coming and are talking about this economic collapse. They're not just talking inflation, they are talking recession. When you see Wall Street losing every single day for the last 7-8 weeks, whatever it is, there are many are saying this is the same thing that happened before the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of America, the United States and NATO and Bush now, you're going to send, 60,000 more of our kids to Eastern Europe, Poland. And NATO is supposed to send 300,000 more. This is not sustainable. It costs billions and billions of dollars to support and house and take care of all of these troops. And I can tell you this, okay, from my own personal experience, and I don't want to go into this any further, but the morale in the United States military is at rock bottom. They have not lost a war or a conflict since World War II, and it was really the Soviets that won that one.
Yeah.
We're not going to waste time with a whole string of defeats, okay? Imagine this now. These troops, Americans, NATO troops, have been deployed and redeployed, cycled in, cycled out, away from their families for months, many months, close to a year at a time. Morale is terrible. Divorce is going out of sight with these poor guys that are being deployed for so many times over and over. So morale is very bad. The cost of this expansion of NATO is out of sight. And when you think about the money that, and it's phony money that the United States is printing to send to Ukraine, or to send to all of these Eastern European countries, hosting the troops, hosting stockpiling weapons and tanks for rapid response. I don't believe this is sustainable. And I think that what Russia and China are doing is what they've always done, and now they're connected, are also looking downstream. They're not looking what's happening right immediately now. They're not responding to the provocations. They're waiting because I think they know that the United States and Europe, NATO, are in a free fall. And I think they're going to wait till it happens. And what I do think that China especially wants, China does not want the United States economy to totally crash because they're so dependent on it, with everything that the United States needs is made in China. And so I think China and Russia together are looking for a soft landing for the hegemon. I do not believe they want it destroyed because it is so important for the global economy and the future of this multipolar world that they both have envisioned. That's my personal opinion, but as I read my tea leaves, as I look at what's happening geopolitically, it is simply not sustainable.
That was a very good analysis. I agree with everything you said, and I really wasn't thinking in terms of not wanting to destroy the U.S. because maybe because I think it ought to be destroyed. But being here in Washington myself, I'm not making any of the decisions, but I would like to point out that you're right about the military and the way the people who never intended to serve 1, 2, 3 tours to lose their businesses because they're away from them at years at a time have been treated. And it's also, it has to do with the domestic division between, to be kind of crude about it, the Trumpsters and the deep state, or the Brennans and the CIA and the people, the traditional deep state, and people will not. There is a sourness about the military now because that people don't want to fight. They don't want to be in an army led by the Democrats and Biden. There is that element because much of the military in the past has come from blue collar workers who were more aligned with conservative values or whatever you want to call them, and there's not that willingness to go and take part in this ridiculous adventure in Afghanistan or Libya or wherever you wanted to have it, Syria, and die for people that you assumed did not care about you. But now, I think George Carlin is right that none of them care about any Americans. They don't care at all. But a couple of things in the press, just to briefly talk about the press, is that in the other day there was an article in the Washington Post about it was below the electronic fold, so it was way down, about this brilliant victory in Ukraine by the Ukrainian forces over a place, I think it was called Navalny. And I was curious, so I looked it up, and it's about 94 miles northeast of Kherson and about 42 miles due north of the Dnieper River. And this great victory was in this town, Navalny, of 191 people. Hardly a town. Now, please tell me how that's a great victory. Please. And then the other absurdity I wanted to point out, this is how desperate the press has become and the language in the press. This notion of the Russians defaulting on their debt. It's like me going up to my bookie and saying, hey, Max, I owe you $1,000 and I owe you 400 VIG. Here it is. I got it. And he runs away from me. He turns and he runs down the sidewalk. Oh, no. Don't give me my money. Don't give me my money. I want to be able to tell everybody you're welshing on the bet. Yeah, and it was so, that whole thing was so stupid. Now, I don't know. Maybe we should go to Brics because I just don't know what to say about the stupid I'm seeing here.
Well, let me make a couple of comments about the military.
Okay.
A couple of more comments. I read an article, and I don't know where it came from. I mean, it wasn't like New York Times or the War Post. It was talking about the United States military lowering their standards for recruits, no longer demanding a high school education. Now, I have to tell you, I have 2 boys in the military. One of them is about to get out, 14 years, and he can't wait to get out. He has been telling me for several years now and complaining how the United States military is lowering their standards, not only for just the grunts and the basic infantry, but special forces, Green Beret. My son is a Green Beret. And he was telling me if he had to go through then or now what he went through then, he would be able to be taking naps as he went through. So, and then a whole talk about the United States military taking women in combat positions. This doesn't sit well with the guys in the military. And then they're talking about gay people in the military. And as you said, most of the people in the military are middle class or under, lower class, and they're very conservative. And this is driving them crazy. It's making them angry, to lose trust in the command. And then what does that do in terms of effectiveness of a fighting force when you really have never been in a fight in all these years? So I believe the situation in the United States military is dire. It's very severe. And the proof of the pudding is they're taking kids now without a high school diploma. That tells me a lot about the state and the status of the United States military.
I think
Go ahead.
I think they also lowered the the athletic standards, not athletic. What's that word? The physical fitness standards.
Oh, absolutely. That was what my son was referring to. He said these guys can't do what we were demanded to do. And so to me, this is really indicative of the status. Now, Carlo, you were talking about these great victories of the Ukrainian military. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It is pure fabrication. It's all been proven, all been exposed. Okay? I want to tell you that the status of this conflict in Ukraine today is the Ukrainian army, including the Nazov battalions, are all but destroyed. The report I received today was something like 200,000 of them have been killed, maimed, wounded. The remaining pockets along the Donbass front are completely encircled by the Russian cauldrons. I read where there's between 50 and 65,000 Ukrainian National Army and Azovs that are trapped. The same thing that happened at the Azovstal steel mill and the Azovstal chemical plant. Completely surrounded. Some of them escaped. Many surrendered. And then many, many more were annihilated. They have no options. It's over. And I'll tell you this. I think the clown prince, the comedian, president of Ukraine, his days are numbered. It's almost over for him. The United States and NATO will not be able to protect him much longer. I saw a poll that something like 60 to 70% of the Ukrainian people that were polled want this war to end. They're tired of it. They do not have trust in the regime in Kiev. So we all need to pay attention. In the next few weeks, very few weeks, not months, this military operation, the first objective goal of Russia to demilitarize Ukraine will have been accomplished. The second thing is the denazification of Ukraine. I'd like to make a couple comments on that if I can. That is not just killing Azov battalions, other Nazi battalions. That isn't just eliminating mercenaries. To get rid of the Nazi ideology in Ukraine, which has been festering since 1945 in Stepan Bandera, to the present day, they have been educating children in schools about Bandera, who is considered a hero of the country. They have been teaching children how to shoot and prepare to kill Russians. This ideology to denazify Ukraine, think about this, my friends. How long do you think that will take? It's not only a re-education process, but to denazify Ukraine means to denazify their Rada, which is their parliament, which is denazify their president, which is denazify Western Ukraine, which is Lvov next to Poland. This is going to take some time. And I do not believe that Russia is going to stop until it's finished. And America and NATO do not have the money, do not have the courage, do not have the ability to oppose the denazification and the neutrality of Ukraine. I'd be interested in some of your comments about that.
I think we should talk about the reprehensible decisions of Zelensky to, just such a cynical exploitation of all this Ukrainian blood. Like, they're dying for no reason. They're dying in the hundreds every day, and they're being shoved to the front. There's a mass mobilization, and that, I think, it's criminal. It's totally criminal what the West is up to. They overthrew that government. They put their guy in power to do just this. They've built up this ideology. They built up this ultranationalism. They've empowered it, and then they unleashed it on Russian-speaking people, and now they're dealing with the after effects, and it's really awful. It's totally criminal. But
well, what the United States really is saying is, we want this conflict to continue until the last Ukrainian. And the Ukrainian professional army has been decimated. What they are sending now to the front are mechanics, carpenters, all kinds of people of skilled jobs and professional people, young kids, even older people. I even heard the other day that they're passing a law where they're going to take people that are up to 65, even some people who are impaired. So this is an indication of how desperate they are. But, Billy Bob, how insane, how evil it is to continue to send these people to slaughter.
And Russia's terms were realistic. They were justifiable. They were legitimate, and they would have been so easy to work with. And Russia has tried to work with them for 8 years since the coup to try and have some kind of peace. Now the U.S. military, I think they're very death averse. There's no way the U.S. can get involved in any kind of a conflict and have body bags coming home, and the government's going to be able to justify that to the American public. So in that sense, the U.S. military is literally a paper tiger. In addition to what you guys were talking about with the the wokeness of the new military versus the conservatives that actually comprise the military, that's definitely a schism within the military. But the other thing is, like, the U.S. sees there's no reason that we should be sending our kids to die, and if that ever started happening, you would see just how weak the U.S. military is.
Now, I think
We're going to take a brief break, but we'll come back around here in just a minute. Thank you for joining us, Regis and Bob. Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Welcome back to Foreign Policy Review. We're going to spend 2 minutes in meditation. Just kidding. We have Regis Tremblay today and Billy Bob and Carlo Parcelli. So we're going to continue the discussion. We can maybe move into this discussion about the Brics and what this means to the United States, or if we have anything further to say concerning the military.
I do want to move to the Brics, but I wanted to say one thing. Okay. We have to understand that there are U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine right now, and of course, not only the surveillance and all of that, and the logistics that they provide the Ukrainian military, but you've got, as Doug Valentine has pointed out, the Central Intelligence Agency, and as actually Regis pointed out earlier, has been training Ukrainian troops for the Ukrainians in various nefarious enterprises for 75 years, and you have special forces. You have the SOG, which, well, I'm thinking about Vietnam now, but you have the SOG there, the Special Operations Group, who's always there. So when you hear about, like, there was a helicopter that went down 2 weeks ago in some godforsaken place, supposedly, and 4 servicemen were killed. They weren't killed there. They were killed in Ukraine. Okay, so we have to clarify that a little bit. So and some of these people that are being captured are special forces in disguised as, the lunatic from New Jersey who volunteered. So, but yes, let's do Brics. Let's go to Brics.
Yeah, I'll say this: the difference, Carlo, is between the troops on the ground, the boots on the ground in Ukraine, and the boots on the ground that were in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. We don't have a lot of our kids with guns that are shooting and having to defend themselves as happened in those other conflicts, as I mentioned. But you're absolutely right. There have been generals there. There have been high-ranking officials that have been commanding everything that's going on the ground and in the air. And as you said, special operations from not only the United States, but Canada, Germany, England, France, and other countries have all sent personnel there. So enough on that subject. We can move on if you like the Brics.
Thank you for that, though. That was excellent. Thank you. Let's do the Brics. Go ahead. Kick it off. Kick it off, Regis.
Well, I know that some of us, including you guys, have been following this for some time. For those who don't know, Brics is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. They have recently accepted for participation India and Iran. There are a dozen other states who are participating in it but not as full-fledged members. African nations are lining up to join. Latin American nations, Caribbean nations are lining up to join. And the vision of the BRICS is the multipolar world. We've been talking about that over and over and over again. And the two leaders of this are Russia and China. But I have to tell you, the inclusion of India and Iran is strategically, not only politically, economically, militarily, but geographically as part of the One Belt, One Road. That's critical to understand. Pakistan is waiting to join. They will be in this very soon. And then a parallel organization is ASEAN, the Association of Southeastern Asian Nations. Now let me read you who's part of that. It's Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and guess who's missing? NATO, the United States of America. So when you look at these two blocks, these associations of countries, and there are dozens of them now, and there will be more, who are not willing to kneel down and bow down before the American hegemon. They're relying on each other for trade. They're relying on each other for security. They're relying on each other for development. They're relying with each other on so many other, on cultural exchanges. If people can only see that, and I mean the regular people, I think Washington, those foreign policy cretins, whoever they are, they know what's going on. They're either in denial or they're totally stupid for doubling down all the time. But for anybody that's got their eyes open, this is it's not just handwriting on the wall. This is like neon signs screaming out in the night to pay attention, because this is where the world is going. And when you combine that with what we talked about earlier in the show, with the economic troubles that the United States and Europe and Japan and South Korea are having, draw your own conclusions. What do you guys think?
Well, I got two things going on here at once. I'm going to do the one I can remember, and that is with Pakistan and the soft coup and Imran Khan there. That sort of set it back a little bit. And the second thing is the other thing is Lula. When Lula comes, if Lula is allowed to run and not murdered by the United States before that election, that will solidify BRICS. The one thing I wanted to mention, this is just a sidelight, is I was reading about this a week ago, and there's about, it mentioned about 6 or 8 organizations like this that were forming, and one of the countries that was mentioned about being interested in joining a essentially Russian Chinese economic alliance was Moldova, and that was really interesting to me, for obvious reasons. But anyway, what is your opinion, Regis, about Pakistan and Brazil?
Well, first of all, in terms of Pakistan, both China and Russia are very close to Pakistan. Pakistan strategically is very important. Pakistan has a long history with both Russia and China. Was part of the Silk Road. The United States is trying like all get out to coerce India and Pakistan to support them, as opposed to, and to condemn Russia and to stay away from China. So that's my take on Pakistan. In terms of Brazil, Yeah, I have the same concerns you do. Some people say as Brazil goes, so goes the rest of South America. I think Lula definitely looks like he's the most favorite one. He'll be elected. I don't think they can stop him, from what I understand. But who knows? He could be assassinated by the United States, by the CIA. You look at what just happened in Colombia.
Yes.
First time ever, a left-leaning president who's more concerned about the people than American drug running. Would like to see Colombia return to South American independence, like so many other countries in South America that have been under the heel of the United States now for centuries. America's backyard, America's sphere of influence. So I think what we're seeing, and with the last, the Association of the Americas that America called in California, they call that meeting. Hey, several didn't show up, and the rest of them basically used that meeting to embarrass the United States, to embarrass Joe Biden. The basic statement was, we are no longer going to be under American imperialism. And when you put these things together, you can see what the future is going to look like. You can see it right now. It's just that the hegemon still has some teeth. It's primarily economic, and where that doesn't work, they threaten you with being bombed to smithereens. But the difference is, this time, the United States is coming up against 2 countries, 3 countries, 4 countries that are powerhouses, that are not countries that can't defend themselves, like Iraq, like Syria, like Libya, like Afghanistan. Now they're dealing with a foe that's capable of taking them down. Big difference, in my opinion.
That was the point I was going to make was, the West has an advantage because it's easier to destroy than it is to build. It's very hard to build and develop and get, a project going with all these international countries. But it doesn't take a lot to throw wrenches in the gears and to sabotage it. And that's what the U.S. is good at. That's what they've been good at for, since the end of World War II. They've had a lot of practice sabotaging leftist governments, leftist economies. And so that's still an advantage. They don't have to build anything. They're going to turn into destroy mode, and they're just going to do what they can to keep things from building, which is a lot easier to do than actually building things. But
well,
again, it's reprehensible.
Talking about building, I just read today that China sent 100 brand new buses to Syria to help them with public transport that's been destroyed. China has building railroads in Africa, involved in mining projects, involved in infrastructure development, electricity plants, water purification. Russia is doing the same thing with humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. I just read that yesterday. Tons and tons of supplies and medicine that Afghanistan has needed and we're not getting. And so, Billy Bob, it's the soft power, the building and the development that China and Russia are conducting around the world today.
I'm hearing their efforts in Afghanistan to help develop that country are working. I mean, Afghanistan is a basket case largely because of the destructive, the policies, the deliberate destructive policies of the West to destroy their economy and make sure they fail. So I'm happy. I'm optimistic. I'm glad China and Russia are engaging in an effort to develop Afghanistan, for instance. But at the same time, you see that Afghanistan isn't doing too well, and that's largely because of the U.S.
Absolutely. The U.S. stole their entire patrimony, $7 billion. They just ripped it off. But to give our viewers some detail about what we're talking about here, China has pledged to build 1,000 schools in Iraq.
Right. Right.
1,000. You know,
1,000.
they have the Grand Renaissance Dam ready to roll in Ethiopia. It's ready to go. They want to run a railroad across the Sahel, and of course, what's the U.S.'s contribution? A la Billy Bob, they cooed every country across the Sahel. They cooed Chad, Niger, Mali, Guinea. And then you talk about South America. Regis is absolutely correct. Mexico refused to go to the OAS because it did not include Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Let's talk about Venezuela. They're flush with cash. They built the 500 new apartments for their citizens that used to live in the favelas. And I've seen them. They're beautiful. There's riots in the streets in Ecuador right now. Bolivia overturned an election and threw that motherfucking Christian asshole into prison, thank God, where she can rot the hell, as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, well, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. And it goes, and the list goes on and on and on. And, it's just, I think Regis is right on the money. It's all coming down, and thank God it lasts. I thought I would die before I saw this, but it looks like I might see a little bit of it before I go on my way to wherever that is.
In Pakistan, there's some female suicide bombers are blowing up Chinese developers. The Chinese construction workers that come there to help develop things, and undoubtedly the U.S. is promoting that. And again, I totally agree with Regis. I'm optimistic. These things the U.S. does, their attempts to destroy what China and Russia are trying to build, are not going to be enough to maintain the status quo. It's gonna, things will improve, but people just ought to be aware and be very angry at the policy decisions of Washington to just be a destroyer of all this great development and the efforts to eradicate poverty and raise living standards.
Yeah, the head of the OAS, Amalgro, he also should be in prison. I would like to see him behind bars. But
he's the head of what?
Amalgro, the head of the Organization of American States.
Is that the one that came in?
He's a Uruguayan. That's where Dan Mitrione, the famous torture artist, operated. He would take homeless people off the streets and torture them in his torture chambers, teaching the Uruguayans and other Latin Americans how to torture people. Dan Mitrione, if you don't know him, you should look him up. A great American torture artist, among many. I mean, the list is long, but he's one that stands out. He was a special torture artist, but too bad he died before Abu Ghraib. He was killed by the Tupamaro movement. That's the Costa Gavras made a movie, State of Siege, which is basically about the murder of Dan Mitrione, and he deserved to die. But that's a little historical note. Regis, more about Brics.
Well, we don't have much time left, I don't think. Do we need to take another break, Dustin?
No, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. I think we've probably said enough about Brics and about ASEAN, the Association of East Asian States, and where that's going. I would like to end with maybe a little bit of a discussion about what's happening in the United States that I see as hopeful, and also in Europe. Now, last week, the Supreme Court came down with this Roe v. Wade overturn. That has unleashed, from what I read and what I see, a tremendous backlash in the United States. On top of Roe v. Wade, we have this layer of rising prices where people cannot afford to put gas in their car. They can't afford to buy food and other commodities they need. They can't afford to pay their rent. You have the whole immigration issue going on. How many people were just found in the back of that semi that were died or that died? And so you have this economic hardship. You have people rising up now in the streets, in the local capitals, protesting pro and con Roe v. Wade. I think that Roe v. Wade could be the spark that triggers an explosion in the United States. There's so much tinder. There's so much anger. And, you know, I have to tell you, Roe v. Wade's not an issue in Europe. But what is an issue is the rising cost of fuel and food. Unemployment is beginning to skyrocket because countries like Germany that have been flush with cash, a major manufacturing company in Europe and the world, don't have the gas to power their industry. They've either shut down or cut back. People in Europe have been protesting, unlike in the United States, against many things, but I have to tell you, against COVID lockdowns. And now we're starting to hear, oh, monkeypox. And we're going to have mandatory vaccinations again. When I see these two things converge, I see what I hope will be a popular uprising against the people who are ruling us and who do not represent us. The people in Europe, I know, are beginning to feel that very strongly. I hope and I suspect that people in America might be waking up to the fact that their government betrayed them in terms of COVID, the scamdemic, and has betrayed them in terms of their economy and their futures. What do you guys think?
Billy Bob, this is your purview.
Well, so I mean, and my analysis goes to, you know, class analysis and the fact that the government is controlled and owned by the capitalist class. So it operates, you know, of, by, and for the capitalist class. And I think China, you know, is the best example of that not happening because, you know, in 1949, China overthrew their government and a communist party took power. And, you know, the Communist Party of China is guided by the principle of, we're going to make policy in the best interest of the working class. That's how policy is formulated. That's not how policy is formulated in the West. It's based on the interests of the capitalist class. So I'm hoping people can wake up to that because I think that's just the fundamental reality that explains what's going on, and it's missed. You know, people talk in terms of, you know, nation states, but nations are comprised of competing classes with oppositional interests. And what's in the best interest of the working class is often the opposite of what's in the best interest of the capitalist class. And what we see is an empire, a capitalist class Western empire, you know, doing its best to forestall its demise and against, you know, a rising Russia and a rising China. And again, Putin, you know, he doesn't embrace socialism. He doesn't embrace it in name, but he implements socialist policies. He's guided by the interest of the Russian people, not just a small class of obscenely wealthy plutocrats, industrialists, oligarchs. But yeah, I mean, that's the truth that people need to wake up to. The idea of class has just been scrubbed from the mind of Western citizenry and the Western working class. And I think it results in a confused analysis. They don't get what's going on. You know, they fall into the Republican versus Democrat paradigm and don't realize that they're both working for the same people.
Dustin, you want to jump in?
I'm empty. I think that I do see it sort of like a lot of riotous action going on. I don't know about Europe and the United States. Definitely the Roe v. Wade stuff has been contentious and people are fighting. And I think people are really sick of the isolation. I think worldwide we're all tired of the dread that comes with being stuck in this position of not knowing indefinite amount of time what's going to happen next with this pandemic and these issues that are isolating us, and what exactly is the next step. And I think people are just going to get tired of it, and there is probably going to be something of an uprising, or at least a huge outpouring of economic activity, or something that's going to flood the entire system. In my opinion, I just think that it's like people are really getting fed up, and I do agree with Regis that that this will be a positive thing. This will be part of the tear shit down and let it come back up and grow and make it better after it's done. After we burn things to the ground, per se.
Build back better. That was Biden's presidential campaign. Build back better.
Regis,
tear it down first.
So I want to piggyback on both of you, Dustin and Billy Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Bob, you said, Putin isn't really a socialist, but he's been implementing social programs to help people. China's been doing the same thing. And I would propose this. The unipolar world is more focused on community and helping everybody to rise up through a variety of not only social programs, but Billy Bob, development, education, building. And what I am skirting about is this really is community building or communism, not in the Soviet ideology, but in all of the good things that came from a people realizing that there is not that class division, people realizing that everything was in the commons. Everybody was taken care of with a house, a job, free medical care, free education, all the way through a PhD if you had the ability. These are some of the good elements of this word communism, living together in community. And I think that this is what the Brics nation portends for the future. A more communal, social belief in a system that takes care of everybody.
My opinion about the United States is if the unrest gets any more intense, it'll become the largest fascist state in the history of the world, and because it's almost already there.
Yeah, it's close to that already. I agree.
Yeah,
it's
it's
on
1 degree.
On the path. And this new Supreme Court is stacked to sort of push some pretty radical right agenda. It seems it's like they're lowering the bar for separation of church and state now too, and they've cut down on the EPA's involvement in climate change and all kinds of just really just tearing down all the progressive actions of the 20th century. It seems like.
Yeah, they don't want me to go without prophylactics. I'll be breeding again. Just don't want to do that. So this is a really stupid country, Regis. It's just idiotic. I mean, you can't believe how idiotic it is.
Yeah,
I deal with it every day. Maybe you can.
The thing that hurts me is that I guess the majority of Americans can't see it, or they're in denial, or maybe they're just too comfortable. That's the thing that's painful. They can't see what's coming.
Yeah, it is. The comfortable thing is kind of worn out. People have access to all of this information, like Chomsky says. It's there. If you want to read about it, if you want to know about it, you can get it. They simply don't access it. They don't care to access it. And I know comfort has a large role in that, but
everybody's shaking up a little bit to think.
Yeah.
So we have
and
remaining.
When they are shaken up, they don't think. When they are shaken up, they don't think. I mean, they're incapable of thought. I poor Billy Bob. I know he has this great faith in the working class, but I'm sorry, I don't share it. Maybe it's because I was around my uncles too long to some personal level. I became disillusioned with the notion of the working class. They were just cement finishers. So
I appreciate your skepticism, and I share it too. what we're seeing in the U.S. is these wedge issues, these issues of guns, issues of sexuality, reproductive rights, immigration, prayer. Like these are all coming back to the fore, and none of these are really threatening to the empire, to the foreign policy of the Western Empire. But it does divide the working class. So I see that maybe they're working to get us really divided and at each other's throats, so they can implement some major fuckery in the next 5 to 10 years that otherwise people wouldn't stand for if they were united and demanding good governance. But
that's the agenda.
With that said, it's time to close the show today. And thanks for watching, everybody out there who's been watching today and commenting. I appreciate your comments. Subscribe to our channel, share our content, and tell us what you think during the show. Thank you to Dust James. That's part of my name as well. You got part of my name. So just keep watching the show every Thursday at 11 Eastern Standard Time. Come back on us next week, and we'll have an extra guest, and we'll talk some more about some of these issues. Thanks for watching the Foreign Policy Review. Thanks again. Have a nice day.